listening to Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network.
How can you be the freest country in the world when you lock more of your own people in cages than any other country in the world? The lesson of 9/11 should have been to never fund another young rebel group in this part of the world again. America started as the smallest government in history, and it's become the biggest government in world history. At the end of the day, it's all about freedom.
Here's your host, Dave Smith.
I didn't see you there. Remember when people used to start commercials like that? They just look at the screen. Oh, hey there, people.
Would you like some milk?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. Hey, quickly before we get started today, if you guys don't know, I have started doing YouTube videos every weekday at 3 p.m. I live stream them. So go check those out if you haven't already. I've been credit to a few people. My buddy Nate Bargatze has been telling me I need to be putting out video content daily for a long time now, so I thank him. I've also been inspired by some of the YouTube stuff that Owen Benjamin and my guest today, Michael Malice, who is one of the most brilliant, hilarious people that I know.
I thought Owen got kicked off.
I believe he's still on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I think his live video privileges got suspended for a little bit, unless you've got something in the last 48 hours. Okay, this is the old stuff.
Good, I'm glad to hear.
All right, well, look, you cut me off as I was complimenting you, by the way, so I'm not doing it again.
We
got this schlub here. That's right. That's what a lot of people, their criticism of you, is that you don't believe in yourself enough. Anyway, the newest addition to the Gas Digital Network family. I'm thrilled that you're here.
Yeah.
I love your show.
I'm like Stewie.
You are a little bit. The show is phenomenal. A little radical from my point of view. We need some regulation. But I get the points that you're making. I think there's some good arguments in there. But Your Welcome is now on the Gas Digital Network.
Tuesdays at 12:30.
Congratulations. Welcome over. We're all real excited to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
My next two guests, you want to be the first to hear?
Absolutely.
Part of the Problem fans, my Tuesday I've got Anthony Cumia.
Ooh.
But the Tuesday after that, on June 12th, I've got Scott Adams.
Ooh, that's a big one.
So the internet has been begging me and Scott Adams to sit down and talk North Korea, and it's going to happen the day of the summit.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And the summit is happening?
It is happening on June 12th.
And this is because didn't Pompeo say it still may not happen or something like that?
As of today, it's happening. As we speak.
Well, this is what negotiating with the North Koreans is like. As of today, it's happening. Trump. Yeah, I guess. But isn't it weird that there's something kind of hilarious about Donald Trump being the guy who could make this moment happen? Because it's everything that like the people hate about Donald Trump. I feel like is what Kim Jong-un looks at and goes like, finally, they elected someone with some common sense over there.
Well, I mean, if Rodman is the one who he's palling around with. Yeah. I mean, I think Dennis Rodman's a lot closer to Donald Trump than he is to Barack Obama in terms of sociology. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Not so much in policy, but in terms of just like his personality. Yeah, absolutely. So there's obviously this is an area that you have a lot of expertise in.
Can we talk about this on Twitter? One of the great things when we announced that I'm coming to Gas, someone said, "I'm glad Dave Smith takes it easy on you neocons." And I thought to myself, I am confident that Dave Smith's position on North Korea is whatever Michael says.
It's fairly close to that. But by the way, first of all, every inch of that is the most absurd critique I've ever heard. First off, considering you and Neocon is insane, and saying that I take it easy on neocons, it's like there's no one. If you search my history, there is no one you can find me being harder on. My whole political awareness, everything about the political beast that I am, was a reaction to the George W. Bush administration. Yeah. This is why I got so into Ron Paul, is because I was just convinced that what George W. Bush was doing and the people he was allowing to lead him were batshit crazy and literally on the verge of destroying everything we had. And when Ron Paul came around, I was like, I didn't even know what libertarianism was. But I found him and I was like, oh, holy shit, this guy is making a lot of sense breaking it down. And then I got lost on a Rothbardian trail at the Mises Institute that I've never recovered from.
There is a certain wing of libertarianism, and this applies in different political philosophies, that thinks if you criticize any foreign government, you're advocating for war with them. Just like a lot of conservatives think if you criticize any right-wing person, you want them fired, or so on and so forth. And it's really fucked up.
And it's as oversimplified as when the left says, like, if you criticize a government program, you're criticizing society taking care of
Right,
that. So, like,
right.
if you're against public education, you're against education.
Or if you're criticizing a person of color, you're racist. It's the same exact
Yeah,
thing. So,
yeah.
and it's true neocons criticize other governments, and it's true that racists go after black people, but that doesn't mean that if you're doing that, you're synonymous with these things. And I see it a lot, and I find it to be disturbing is the word.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And you would think, at least I would like to think that libertarians were somewhat above that, but they're not.
The idea that anyone would begrudge me the right to criticize a government is, it's a topic.
And of all governments, of all the governments,
Right.
I mean, it's not like, a minarchy that presides over a free market economy. You're talking about the most authoritarian, totalitarian, I should say, government on the face of the earth.
I just was editing my chapter on Jared Taylor in my book, and I just lapsed into Jared Taylor's voice because the point he made is the idea that Hitlerism in this day and age would be a model for America is fantastic.
It's fantastic. And if white people are allowed to...
And I said, you mean fantastic as in crazy, right? He goes, oh, yes, thank you for the clarification. He didn't mean fantastic as in wonderful. He just meant like it's fantastical.
Right.
But it's very funny.
Fantastic has taken on a common use that would not exactly help him out in that So
sentence. Here's the question I had for you. You asked me before we started taping. I'm editing the book now to get it back to the publisher. There's a reference... You're referenced by Chris Cantwell at one point because he says, I don't have a problem with Jews like you and Dave Smith. Now, I have to put...
Well, if that doesn't help my career, I don't know what will.
I have to put in brackets a descriptor so the reader knows who Dave Smith is, right?
You can just assume.
Well, I mean, I know it's a very unique name. So the question is, do you want me to put anarchist comedian, or I currently have it right now on my desktop. It says moderate libertarian comedian. So what do you want? Should I put? What do you want? What do you want in there?
No, don't put moderate because people aren't going to get the joke.
What joke?
And
I think you're not a libertarian.
Yes,
moderate Republican comedian.
Yes. Put libertarian, okay? That's
literally what do you want to put? I'll put whatever you want.
I would say libertarian. I don't know.
You don't want anarchist? Okay.
I don't know. It's weird because I always thought one of the reasons at first, and I guess this was still kind of in the Ron Paul moment. So things have changed a lot. But I always thought libertarian was just a term that people wouldn't have misconceptions about as quickly as it's like anarcho-capitalist, which I believe Murray Rothbard coined the term.
Him or Friedman?
Yeah. Well, I think it was Rothbard.
It could be Rothbard.
But yeah, David Friedman. You'd be saying not Milton Friedman. But the term, it's almost in true Rothbardian, contrarian style. Almost, let me pick the most toxic words and put them together and really, because everybody, I mean, capitalist was a term that Marx loved to use, which is
Marx invented the term.
Yeah, right. So Marx invents the term as a critique of the system. And anarchist just brings to people's minds throwing a Molotov cocktail through a window. So I was always kind of even though I am that term, maybe, and then I would like the term voluntarist or other things like that because I just thought that was more, a better description. But nowadays, libertarianism is so associated with Gary Johnson and these kind of
William Weld.
Yeah. People who not only aren't, it's not just that they're not actually libertarians. It's that they're kind of
maybe they are and you aren't.
Maybe.
I mean, who was it? I was talking to Kennedy, and she made the point that someone gave her the definition of libertarian as someone who's fiscally conservative and socially awkward.
That's pretty great.
And my friend Evan came up with the term aspergo capitalism.
I like that.
I like that as well.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
But still, I'm almost, at this point, I'm lost. I don't actually know. I kind of still feel like the term libertarian is worth holding on to. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no real right or wrong answer. You say, well, maybe you're not the libertarian and they are. It's I mean, really what happened is our word liberal got hijacked from us a long time ago. So then we hijacked some fucking French anarchist term, libertarian. None of it really makes sense. Right. But it's I'm for free markets and I oppose the state.
Right.
So that's...
Well, I can't have the whole thing.
So just say libertarian.
You would prefer libertarian to anarchist.
Now, you prefer anarchist, right?
Yes.
Now, why is that?
Because I think it's more accurate.
But anarchist is so lumped in with, Noam Chomsky anarchism.
I would much rather be lumped with Noam Chomsky than with Gary Johnson.
Huh. That is a tough thing to rebut. Okay, yeah, probably that too.
I would much rather be lumped in with Emma Goldman than with, some of these, so-called, libertarians.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Although I still do feel, I guess I struggle with this in some ways because I tend to, a big part of me still feels like if you're anti-war, that's the closest thing to me anyway. Like even if you're someone like Noam Chomsky, it's like, okay, I completely disagree with you on markets, but man, does he break down the military-industrial complex and the state power and all of that kind of like, he brilliantly breaks down kind of like the intellectuals who protect the power source. But then someone like Thomas Sowell, in many ways, I feel like is a closer ally on just about everything else.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell is superb. He's by far the best of the right-wingers.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say enough good things about him. But what was really funny about when I interviewed Jared Taylor, and I guess I'm kind of spoiler alert, he said in the Ethno-State, when I was on, I don't know if you listened when I was on Thad Russell's podcast, I think he taped you the same day. The second
yes,
time
it was the same day, yeah.
And he was really grilling me on who would be allowed in the Ethno-State, come when it comes, and am I allowed or am I not? And
he's grilling you, but you're not an ethno-state.
No, but he's like, what does Jared Taylor think? And I'm like, well, maybe you should ask Jared Taylor. Like after a while, it's like I'm comfortable speaking for Kim Jong-il because I read all the books. I sat down with Jared Taylor once, and this is his life's work, and I'm not in a position to.
It's also easier to get Jared on the horn.
Yeah, that's true. And he said, if Thomas Sowell wants to be in the ethno-state, I have no problem with that. And I'm like, all right, if you're letting Thomas Sowell in, the concept of ethno-state goes out the window.
Well, one of the things that you do a really good job of
is a Jared Taylor impression.
Is a Jared that is, it's up there with your top five
When
talents.
I went to Charlottesville, Pax, who was one of the speakers, said, look, if the Nazis give you shit, just do your Jared Taylor impression and you'll be fine. He actually said this, and I was fine.
And you went there and just like hung out and interviewed people and stuff like that?
I wanted to speak because I thought it would be great to get up there and say, here are my 5 favorite RuPaul's Drag Race contestants in no order. So half the crowd would love it and half the crowd would be batshit, but just troll them. Then I realized for the rest of my life it would be Michael Malice, who spoke with Richard Spencer at Charlottesville, but then the night before was the march, which I didn't know was happening, and we were seeing it. We drove down from my friend's place in Arlington, who is a libertarian, and it was like, holy shit, because I thought there'd be 20 people there. I'd never even literally heard the city Charlottesville before. And then it was like a thing.
Well, if you paid attention to the mainstream media, there were actually 100,000 people there.
Is that what they said?
No, but I mean, they made it seem like
it's
they just
place.
at no point would they say what the number was, and they just kind of like show very zoomed in pictures of the rat. Because it's in their interest to be like, see, this is what got Trump elected. This is what the extreme right is.
It was I wasn't there for the march. I was there for the rally that was canceled. Antifa outnumbered, the white nationalists by an order of magnitude. It was crazy. They had the streets filled.
Yeah, that's
I'd never seen so much manic panic hair since the days back in the day in St. Mark's Place.
And from what I understand, I think Christopher Cantwell is still going through the legal process.
He's got a boot. I think when I talked to him, he had a ankle monitor.
Which is quite something, man.
Don't you think? Yeah, so that was that.
Guys, today's show is brought to you by BetDSI.com. BetDSI, it's the best place for online gambling. Gambling, of course, is a completely voluntary action between two adults, which has been demonized by the state. They outlaw gambling and then set up their own state lottos, which is basically just gambling with horrific odds. So now you can go have fun over at BetDSI.com. It is the NBA Finals. The Cavs looked like they could have taken game 1, but J.R. Smith ran out the clock of a tie game. I'll tell you, the Cavs are big underdogs, and I think this series is going to end up going to 6. I would put some money on the Cavs in game 3 and game 4. But anyway, if you want to win some money without having to risk anything, BetDSI will give you a free $25 wager. All you got to do is go over to BetDSI.com and register using promo code PROBLEM25, and you get a free $25 to go gamble. You can win money without having to put anything in. And if you make a deposit, you get a 200% bonus match on your first deposit. So go over to BetDSI.com, start having some fun today. So one of the things, and I know you're writing a book on this, and from
editing, it's done.
Editing a book on this. I'm putting out a book on this soon. When's it going to be out?
I don't know. I got to give it back to the editor. I'm just flying through it. I got my notes back last Wednesday. I'm already almost done, just tweaking it.
Great.
So
great.
I'm thrilled.
Now, and the book is on the road.
Wait, have you, by the way, my editor says you should put in these guys. They're important. And I'm like, in all my years traveling these circles, I've never heard of him. Have you heard of the Journal of American Greatness?
No.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
What is that?
He's like, this is a new right that are like bringing these ideas to the mainstream that are very influential. I'm like, I have never heard of them ever.
They're not bringing them to the mainstream that well.
Yeah.
So now you're breaking down the new right in the book. And I know from talking to you about it, you're kind of, it's amazing how much for whatever the discussion of the alt-right or the Donald Trump supporters or any of that, they're all, the mainstream kind of loves to just paint them with a broad brush. It's like, well, a bunch of racists, a bunch of xenophobe racists. Right. But one of the things that you really understand, and I know this from talking to you, is that there really is there's like a spectrum. And there's a lot of different,
well chosen word.
Yes, right. But there's a lot of different types. And even when you're mentioning Jared Taylor, of the ethno-state crowd, he's probably like one of the softest. Because he will say things like, yes, Thomas Sowell could come live with us. Right. Even Jared Taylor, I think, doesn't have a problem with Jews. I think he's the only one.
No, there's a lot
group
who don't have problems with Jews.
Really?
A lot of them are it's a mix. It's a complete mix. Huh. He also is like, you can't just secede and have the Southern conservative South and be an ethno-state. He goes, my mom was a gay rights socialist, but she was a proud Southerner. So he's like, you can't have a culture where everyone agrees politically. So he's much more nuanced than people give him credit for. But my whole chapter on him, I really disagree with his views as expressed completely. Because the big point that if we're all one ethnicity and we're all one country together, everything's going to be harmonious. I mean, he doesn't deny the Civil War, World War I, World War II. And the point he makes is, well, we're not going to ever see that again. And before World War I, there was a consensus both with the communists and with the West. It was like, we've now achieved a new level of humanity, which is true, the Industrial Revolution, and now war is a barbaric thing of the past. It's like, no, now the machines are going to do war with you. Right. And now you're going to have people put into literal threshers. And that's why plastic surgery was invented as a consequence of World War I, because people are coming back literally all mangled and deformed. Right.
And you could see, in a way, you could understand where some people might believe that at that point in history. I mean, you had very largely successfully in the West the separation of church and state, which really cracked down on the religious wars, which were like kind of the main driving force for war before that. You had relatively a big period of peace during the 19th century. You have the industrialization, and you're like, yeah, okay, maybe human beings have just kind of figured this out.
Everyone's getting richer.
Yeah, why would we fight wars?
Fewer kids are dying, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
A really drastic change in that century. Right. And then, of course, in the 20th century, you have the bloodiest conflicts ever. And even further at the end of World War I, what did they call it? They call it the war to end all wars. Yeah. They go, well, man, look how bloody this was. We'll never do this again.
And in all seriousness,
it happens again. Spoiler.
Yeah, I actually had David Petruzza, who did a great book called 1932, comparing the rise of Hitler and the rise of FDR in that year on when I was on Compound. And my first question to him was, this Hitler guy in your book, he's got a lot of good ideas. Whatever happens to him?
You guys, big success.
Yeah, it's, for a while.
Then
not so much.
That's a rough book to put a bookmark in the middle and go like, this is really interesting. I'm gonna pick this up next week.
Yeah.
But it is it's really like one of the great kind of like tragedies of humanity that we had this industrial revolution. We do get human beings up to a point that they had never been at before in at least in recorded civilization. I don't know about like 10,000 years before Egypt, maybe there was some society we don't know about, but the highest level of humanity, and then we take that and go to war with this economic backing now, where we can do destruction that could have never happened before.
And this is another little defense of Neville Chamberlain that I never heard anyone make, which when Hitler's getting aggressive, World War I had just happened, like 20 years ago. So for him to be what do they call him? I'm having a total brain fart. To just be like, look,
Pacifist,
an appeaser. To be like an appeaser, it's like, if you just had World War I and like all your young people died for no reason, I can see that being like, I don't care, we're not fucking fighting again.
Yeah, I heard a few people, of course, because like my grandfather, who he was actually in a concentration camp for a little bit and got out of Germany in 1938. He got out like at the end, like if he hadn't gotten on that boat, he was going to end up dead. And the rest of his family dead. And he came back and then enlisted and went over in 42 and fought. And he despised the French and bought into the complete narrative of like, these guys just, kowtowed out of there. And like, they let the Nazis run roughshod over them. They didn't care about. But when you actually go back and look at it, it's like, the French just went through this bloody World War I, and at the end of the war, they draw up the lines exactly like they were before, and they're like, you know what? I'm just like, you really kind of can't blame them for being like, we're just not getting back into another one of these things. Like, let them march through the arc, and then they'll be out before you know it.
Right, and this was a big part of the rise of modernism in art. Like Gertrude Stein, who's a very famous art collector and writer, living in France in the West Bank, where everyone was visiting Hemingway and all these other people. You know, she was supposedly the one who coined the term "lost generation," because you had all these young people. First of all, the generation was lost; literally, they all died. But then you also had the sense of hopelessness, because it's like you knew all the shit you were told before was a lie. And one of the big things, I have a book on my shelf I haven't read yet called The Penguin Book of World War I Poetry. This idea was there was nothing more aspirational than dying in war. It was like there's all these poems where, like, I can't wait to go to war and to, like, be in a grave. And that mentality is so foreign to us. This is 100 years ago. It's not that far away. Right. But they really wanted to enlist. They wanted to fight. It was glorious. It was the highest calling you could have. My favorite art movement, the Italian Futurists, were around that time. They all died because they signed up to fight for Italy. All these, and the thing is, these weren't like nowadays where it's poor people. These are like Harvard and Yale. These are the elites. They were the first to sign up. They're like, I'm a gentleman. This is my calling. And you had this huge, decimation. So that's another thing. It's like, yeah, you can understand how you had all these, surrealism and all these art movements because nothing made sense anymore.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to replace it with. And then Hitler comes along. It's just like, okay, I don't know what this fucking crazy shit is, but I'm not fucking fighting again. I'm tired.
Right. No, you can understand it. I mean, if you actually try to put yourself there. And that's one of the weird things about history in general, is that it's easy to just be like, oh, team crazy over there. But if you actually try to put yourself in that position, on any of the positions, you can kind of understand how these things happen. Now, I'm not saying the guy operating like the death squads or the guy, like that's a pretty dark place. But just being the average German even. I mean, you understand after what they went through in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, where there'd be some strongman like Hitler rising up and kind of being like, yeah, all right, you're going to bring back national glory. My kids won't be starving. Right. That sounds good.
It was Mencken who said, I'm going to fuck up the quote, something about the average man does not want liberty, he wants security. Yep. He just wants to feel safe. And I think that's very, very true. And we see that over and over. And the other thing is funny, I tweeted this out maybe a year ago. I asked people of my friends, I'm like, if you're on the left, do you think you would have fought the Confederacy in the 1860? And a couple of people were like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I don't believe you. I know you think so, but you wouldn't. Yeah.
One of my favorite passages, probably in any book I've ever read, was in Tom Wood's Real Descent, when he makes the point, and I'll butcher this as well, but the point he was making was, he was like, look, if you're against slavery in 2015, when he wrote the book, he goes, that's pretty meaningless. Like 99.9% of people agree with you. There's no threat of slavery. It doesn't mean anything. If you were opposed to slavery in 1840, it really meant something. Like the Abolitionist Party was like 2%. There were regular lynchings of abolitionists, and they would get off on trial. It was like a really gutsy position to take. So the idea, and he said, when you see these people, particularly on the left, social justice warriors, who are getting outraged by the thing that everyone else is also outraged about, and just kind of falling in line and being sheep, you can guarantee in 1840 those people would not have been against slavery. And the real test is kind of like, what do you stand against today that actually has some consequences attached to it? Right. Like, what issue of freedom are you willing to defend that could actually get you in trouble, where you're actually risking something? And it's much more uncomfortable for people to think about that.
One of my favorite essays online, which is extremely important for everyone to read, is by Paul Graham, and it's something like What It's Okay to Say. And he makes this exact point about, like, ideas are like fashion, and they go in and out. And we know people were wrong about everything in the past. Why are you so sure today? It's like paulgraham.org/say.html, something like that. You can find it. So that, and my probably second favorite here, William Lloyd Garrison, was an abolitionist. Mm-hmm. His biography is called All on Fire. It's superb. And yeah, he was lynched in Boston because he said, we need to end slavery today and give blacks equal rights today. And he called the Constitution a covenant with hell. And he said the North should secede from the South.
Wow. Yeah, it really does put things in perspective when you realize what people have had to risk and what the price people have paid for some of their views. So I was saying for a long time, and people who listen to this show, you could actually, I mean, if you go back into the older episodes, you can kind of, as the rise of the alt-right or whatever you want to call it comes up,
you are so fascinated with them, much more than me.
I was to some degree. I mean, I was fascinated with the whole Trump
No, but I mean like movement. The Spencer Cantwell people. Well, I think you find them more intriguing than I do.
No, I mean, look, honestly, at this point, I really don't.
Okay.
At the time, I did.
Yeah.
At the time I did, I thought it was interesting, and I thought here's where my take on it was more or less, right? So I had been saying for years, and this goes back to Obama's first term, where I would say, once I kind of, even in light of what we were just saying, what I kind of came to the conclusion of was, I was like, well, what are the moral outrages that are going on right now that people just tolerate? And the things that seemed fairly obvious to me were bombing the crap out of third world countries, slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people for what are obviously bullshit reasons, which the justifications for war get disproven 2 years later every single time.
And no remorse.
Right, with no remorse, and then still the same people leading us into the next one. Oh, sorry about that one, but we got to go have this next one.
Right, I have no problem forgiving them. You know what I mean? I have no problem being like, I was wrong, I totally blew it, therefore I shouldn't be trusted with my finger in the butt.
Yes.
That would be fine.
Yeah, exactly. That I could actually take, or at least I would think is a more reasonable approach. Yeah. And the other one that came to me right away was just the prison industrial complex. Or the fact that it's like, okay, so we don't call it slavery anymore, but how many people do we have locked up for nonviolent crimes? And I'm not giving some lefty fantasy of like there's no violent criminals, but look up the numbers. It's a lot. There's a lot of people locked in a fucking cage being tortured and raped essentially for what shouldn't be a crime at all, what literally shouldn't even be against the law. And when I looked at those things, what I used to say, as I was kind of just becoming disillusioned with the left, is I would go, man, for all the outrage that these guys have about mean words or racism, however broadly you perceive racism to be, like whatever. I'm not for racism, but is Roseanne's tweet the greatest, like sin out there? How about the outrage to this? And I used to say, and this was before the alt-right existed, I used to say, I would take the most bigoted racist person in the world who's anti-war over the average left-wing person. And I used to just say this just as kind of like an idea, a hypothetical. And then the alt-right came, and I was like, oh, fuck, they're taking me up on my deal. I was like, oh, shit. Then you see Christopher Cantwell, and you're like, oh, motherfucker, he really is, that is a vicious racist. But, he's against the fucking wars. And I did find something interesting, even about Spencer, where they make Richard Spencer out to be the devil. And it's like, I disagree with Richard Spencer about 90% of the stuff that he says, I think. But he is like, the two world wars were the greatest catastrophes ever. We never should have fought the war in Iraq. We never should be, fucking around in the Middle East the way we are. And I was kind of like, well, I actually do think on the most important moral question, he's on the right side. And then when, I just thought it was interesting enough to have a conversation with both of them. And the reaction to it is like really quite revealing. You're like, well, I mean, so I can go on a Fox News panel with a CIA
No, you can't.
operative.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah, now I can't. Now I got to do it over at Headline
miss
News.
you.
The views are down, but the money's up. But now, but I could go on a panel with a CIA analyst. I could go on a panel with a Democratic politician, with whoever. That's fine. But I talked to this guy who's got like views which I don't even share. But just the fact that I dignified them with a conversation was like, this is a line too far. And it did, I'll tell you, it really showed me about like the mainstream libertarians.
Okay.
And they don't like when I call them this. But when Nick Gillespie or somebody like that talks to me, their first topic is like, how could you have a conversation with Christopher Cantwell?
So this is something I don't understand. I'm going to defend Nick Gillespie in this case.
Okay.
Not Nick Gillespie, the Nick Gillespie. If our argument as anarchists is that without the government enforcing things and having freedom of association, which we agree on, what will instead be in its place are things like boycott and ostracism. Mm-hmm. So if you are not ostracizing these people, that's proving the left's position that without the government and Twitter enforcing rules, these people would not be ostracized.
Well, no, I don't agree. Well, look, even by that same logic, then I should be ostracizing people who are actual killers.
Of course you should be ostracizing killers.
No, but I'm saying, I'll go do a panel on Fox News or now Headline News with somebody who is a CIA agent.
But you're getting
somebody
paid.
who is a soldier.
You're getting paid.
I get paid for this podcast?
No, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
This is work.
That's fair.
I'm not having a beer with either of those guys. I mean, it's like, not even necessarily that I wouldn't have a beer with those guys. The point I'm making is...
No, but there it is. That's the whole thing.
Well, here's the point, though. I'm not even against social being ostracism. Ostracism. There you go. Thank you. This is why I keep smarter people around me. I'm not trying to ostrich any of these people out of a... But my point is that, look, I don't know that the sin of having a preference for people who are in your race is something that's worthy of being ostracized. I disagree with it. And I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not for it. But somebody who, by that matter, a minarchist who's supporting a state still, should they be ostracized as well?
Hold on. There's a big difference between someone who has preferences for one race and Chris Cantwell and Richard Spencer. I don't think that's a fair descriptor of their ideology and how they act.
Okay, fair enough.
They're activists for certain ideologies.
No, okay, fine. But I don't know also if the whole... Look, I think
let me just say one more thing. I believe in judging people not by what they say, but what they do, right? So if someone has these ideas and I would never know it, I don't care. But if someone's life is to spread these ideas as much as possible... That is something that's very different.
Okay, but if we're saying that we're anarchists...
Oh, I just got a text from my Nazi friend.
As I say, because I just got to cut out early. I got to go. They need me back down in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I got to break some glass.
But so if we're saying we're anarchists because we believe in voluntary transactions,
right,
which is basically another way of saying that we believe in the non-aggression principle. Right. We believe in not aggressing against people. My point is that no one in the, and I want to stop using Nick Gillespie because I like Nick. I don't, but nobody in the Reason magazine, Cato Institute, nobody in that world would have a problem with me if I said, "Oh, I just grabbed a beer with my friend Keith, the cop, who was a police officer." Now, by our morality, but it's following the non-aggression principle and your logic of judging people by what they do, not what they say. Sure. Keith is a guy who went around harassing, kidnapping people with impunity. Right. Now, that to me is a far greater sin than somebody who preaches hatred of other races.
So let's get this clear. Mm-hmm. You are saying Keith the cop is worse morally than Chris Cantwell.
Yes. Keith, are you listening?
Wow.
By the way, I like Keith.
You love Cantwell, apparently.
But no, I don't. But it's like, no, and look, for personal reasons.
And I don't got beef with Cantwell on a personal level. I got on with him fine.
No, I kind of, honestly, especially with what he's going through after the whole Charlottes thing, I feel bad for the situation he's in. I mean, look, you can say, I think I
don't want to use him as an example because I think he's a smart guy. And
he is a smart guy.
I've had a good conversation with him. So let's just say a neo-Nazi, not him specifically.
Sure. Okay, fine. But in general, look, I mean, like when Anwar al-Awlaki was predator drone bombed by Obama, I was like, this is an outrage. I mean, he's a U.S. citizen. There were no charges pressed against him. And it's like, now, he had claimed loyalty to al-Qaeda. Right. I'm not defending his ideology to still say that's a fucked up punishment.
So who would you be ostracizing? Ugly people?
Well, obviously, we got to get them out first. Well, no, I'm not sure. I mean, look, I think that people who would, like, in an anarcho-capitalist society, who should we start ostracizing?
Well, there's no we. I'm talking about you.
Okay, so me, but who I believe I and other people should too. Well, I would say certainly if there was somebody who was preaching violence, somebody not committing violence, because then it's okay to kind of, but preaching anything that I thought, if somebody was preaching socialism, preaching anything like that, I would think it's appropriate.
Spencer is a socialist.
Yeah, I know. This is one of the things I liked better about Cantwell than him. At least Cantwell's economics are good.
Wait, so you would be ostracizing Spencer?
I guess to some degree, I feel like you have to pick your battles.
I agree with you.
And so I can't ostracize everybody who's not an anarcho-capitalist in today's world. But if you're asking me in an anarcho-capitalist society where we have the majority of people kind of already living in a voluntary world, then I don't know. I think maybe if there was a business who was, say, discriminating in a really shitty way, not discriminating because, like, there's one group of people that keep robbing us, so we're not letting people like that come in the store anymore, that I could maybe understand. But if there was someone with a no Jews sign on, because we don't rob anyone illegally. So if there was somebody
back in the day, we were the biggest gangs.
Yeah, it's true. but we grew out of it.
Yeah, Murder Inc.
Yeah, but that's like, you're talking about us when we were like 13.
Even
now we're in our 60s.
I like how even the murder gang is a business and it's an LLC. It's amazing.
There were still 90% accountants. It was just one guy with a gun and a bunch of guys doing numbers.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I mean, I would kind of. But in other words, I would be, if everybody thought it was a moral outrage that police can just go stop somebody and do what, if any other human being were to do this, we would say you just kidnapped somebody. But police can do it. Right. And if everybody was on board that that's wrong and there was one guy doing it, I would say, yeah, let's ostracize him because that's an effective non-violent means to kind of eliminate this behavior. But when 99.9% of people all accept that as legitimate, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Ostracize everybody? I mean, you know what I mean? Then I'm really just isolating myself.
I don't know, because this is another thing I got into on Twitter. And I'm thinking out loud, and there's such knee-jerk reactions to all this shit, which is really fun to see. One of the other points is, in a free market, you use boycott to regulate how businesses operate effectively, right? Like that's how the free market's going to operate. Many times, no matter what the issue is, and I've talked about this with Tom also, there's some business that's, the subject of boycott, perhaps unfairly, and the immediate reaction is, it's Twitter, it's a private company, they can do what they want. Yeah, I know they're a private company. I know that they can do what you want. What I'm saying is, I am using my freedom, or someone else's, to criticize them, and that is not inherently wrong. It's a case-by-case basis.
Yes, I agree.
But there's some libertarians who knee-jerk will say, you should not criticize a private company because they're a private company.
Okay, so this is, I agree with that completely, and I think the heart of the problem there is that there are some libertarians. One of the things that people are attracted to about libertarianism is its simplicity. And this is a problem. It's like there is something beautiful about the simplicity of libertarianism, but it's like they go like, oh, the market figures it out, and non-aggression, and that is morality. That's the end of it.
How many libertarians does it take to change a light bulb? None. The market will take care of it.
Right, yes, right. But there is this feeling of like, well, I have now figured out this one thing that answers everything. And actually, what libertarianism is a very specified philosophy of peace, of how you organize a peaceful society. And then there are way more complex questions after that about, like libertarianism doesn't have anything to say about how you should treat your girlfriend other than don't hit her.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like there's some other really important questions there. Like, so the problem is that, they go right away like this kind of knee-jerk thing like, well, the market will decide. And actually it's like, no. I mean, I saw a few libertarians online.
That's the thing is, you are the market.
They were
I'm
saying,
the market. You are the market.
Yes, that's right. So I saw this one libertarian guy who was tweeting at me or Facebook posting at me. He was saying, because I was upset that ABC fired Roseanne, and I didn't think she deserved to be fired over the tweet. And they were like, "Oh, so you're absolutely fine with the NFL saying players can't kneel?" Which, by the way, I didn't like that decision either, for the record. But he was like, "Oh, you're fine with that, but you're not fine with this. Both private companies, man." And I'm like, yes, okay, here's the thing. I'm not advocating the government come and throw anyone in jail. Therefore, I'm being a good libertarian. Right. Within that framework, I can have one opinion about one private company doing something and another about another, which, by the way, I was against both of them. I didn't like it. But even if I did, even if I said, yeah, good, make them stand for the flag, which really isn't something I would think. But sure, even if I was like, yeah, they're not allowed to kneel for the national anthem, and Roseanne's fired, I can feel one way about one and a different way about the other. Right. It has absolutely nothing to do. The only libertarian point is that they do have a right to do it. Right. As long as we're together in that, everything else is fine.
It's baffling to me to see the response be like they're private companies. No shit.
Because and there is a real irony there, because when people are attracted to the simplicity of libertarianism, where it's like, oh, well, I know the answer to everything now. It's privatize it. It's non-aggression principle. It's let the market decide. It's like, right, but one of the major reasons, of course, there's the moral aspect of it, but one of the major reasons why we understand why things need to be privatized is because things are enormously complex. Like, that's one of the major points. The absurdity of a guy like a Barack Obama or a guy like Donald Trump, here's what they have in common. Okay, they both get up there and they go, here's how we need to run healthcare, foreign policy, the banking system, the education system, the blah, 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 XYZ. It's like, nobody even knows how to run one of those things. Right. There's no individual who has the knowledge to even do one of those industries, to be the dictator of that. You think you can just take on all of this? Are you out of your fucking mind?
Yes,
like, a modern advanced society is enormously complex. And that's why only through the market with price signals and different experts coming together and voluntarily trading things can we figure anything out.
Right. I agree completely. So it's just very weird to see any kind of pushback. And it was also it's I don't know. It's just this week's. I mean, it's been also this kind of thing where if you're doing this, or you're actually not real libertarian, or you're not really an anarchist, then it's just like, listen, you want to give me your fucking litmus test? I don't care.
Right.
Well, I do care. It's It's just like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, it really is strange to me. And then of course there's a lot of like, which I've always been a little bit removed from. Because like I came into libertarianism from the Ron Paul movement, and then I like the Mises organization and guys like Tom Woods, and it is all kind of what are considered the right libertarians. But I guess there's been a growth of this left libertarian thing, which I'm always removed from, but I see. And then just on social media, I do see some of it, which is like they're really like they want to be libertarians, but then if you also don't adopt this kind of left-wing worldview,
right,
then you're not a true libertarian.
Right.
So someone like Ron Paul isn't libertarian enough for them because he's not talking about like transgender rights or something like that, which is strange to me how that got mixed into this whole world.
Yeah. I mean, look, progressivism is a religion like any other, so they want to hold on. You could be a Christian. This was an argument, 30 years ago? I don't know when. Like, can you be a good Christian and be a good libertarian? The answer became, yeah, obviously. And now the thing is, can you be a good progressive and can you be a good libertarian ideologically? And I think the answer is going to be yes.
Now, you're not a very religious guy.
No.
Not at all, right?
No.
And I'm not either. But I do feel like I was like maybe in my early 20s kind of more of like a militant atheist.
Oh, I was never that.
And I really... I realized how naive that was.
It's like the girl writing in her journal who likes The Cure, with her fingerless gloves with purple ink. You know, it's the male version of that.
But enough about Big J. Okerson. Hey, come on, I love the guy. But there is something where, and you also do realize, you know, I'm not like a believer, but it does seem a little bit more than coincidental that every single time religion escapes, like in Western civilization's history, every time religion is completely pushed down, statism seems to be what rushes in and fills that vacuum, which is a far more dangerous religion. Right. And it is a religion. It's got all the problems that religion has, except it's inherently backed by violence.
Yes.
And that's kind of, you know, not great.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the big theme of the book, too.
Oh, really?
That progressivism is a religious faith.
Well, that is a really fascinating
And I think that's
theme.
going to be... You know what's really funny is I was watching this... I saw this... There's this great Twitter account called like Global Hot Takes or Hot Takes. It's just really funny. I forgot the handle. And they had one... Some girl had tweeted out, Ayn Rand died in public housing and in Social Security. What a hypocrite. Which is insane. She was not in public housing. Her apartment's on 120 East 34th Street. I have her phone number in my cell phone. I'm not even joking.
Really?
Yeah, and she was apartment 5G or 6G. Anyway, she had a nice 2 bedrooms in Murray Hill. So someone, Andrew Stover, who follows me on Twitter, replied, she didn't, you know, she just took back the money that was stolen from her, which is obvious. You know, if you view taxation as theft, and you get money in income tax refund, it's like if you stole my painting and I go to your house and take my painting back, it's like good.
Right.
Except you should still be in jail because you stole to begin with.
It's like if your mugger turned around and had a 20 sticking out of his back pocket and you take it and you're like, thought you were against theft though, bro. You're like, I'm literally recouping from the group that stole from me what was stolen.
Directly.
Yeah.
There's no middleman. It was bent to you. I guess they think when you take a Social Security tax, it somehow magically becomes a different color or in a different fund from the rest of the money. It's like money is fungible. A dollar of Social Security is $1 of Army is $1 of education.
Right,
it's all the same. It's in one pile. So, and the responses to him were all like, what an idiot, what a ridiculous take. Like all of them, just making fun of his response. And that was my epiphany of just how blue-pilled the median American is. And that's why I'm really excited about the book. I'm selling it already because I just got really excited about it again this week, being like, holy shit. For a lot of people, this is going to be their first chance to encounter these ideas. I'm bringing the concept of the cathedral to the mainstream, and it's going to blow people's minds. Yeah, no, I'm sure it will. That's something that I've kind of been I've had a few moments like that where you kind of just realize how blue-pilled the average person is on this stuff. And it's interesting because after a while, these ideas become so obvious to you. Right. And it's not that they are, because, you know, it's like there before, but for the grace of God go I. Like, it's
if I hadn't encountered or read the right things, maybe I'd be, in the state where I wouldn't get it too.
I never would have been, because when I was taught from kindergarten by my parents who left Soviet Russia, that this is all lies and these people are all full of shit, and you just have to obey them.
Yeah, so you had a background that kind of like made this crystal clear. Yeah. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of people out there who are kind of like have told me, it's like, oh, I had this idea about what libertarians were, and I heard you, and I was like, oh, I get it. I get what they're saying. Right. And it's, so what made you want to write this book?
Because I knew someone was going to do it, and it might as well be me who was going to do it right. So I knew there'd be some talking head on Fox and all these things, getting it wrong. And my editor, in his last notes, he wants me to do to redo the introduction. The point he made, which is a good one, is the same way that when I started with North Korea and did the book I started writing it. I went there in 2012. When North Korea was talked about in 2012, which was 6 years ago, it wasn't that long ago. The consensus was they're insane and suicidal. Why are they doing this? They're insane. Why are they doing this? They're suicidal. And the point I made, obviously, is that they've been around for 60, 70 years. They're suicidal. They're really bad at it.
Yeah.
And now everyone, and I'll take a small bit of credit for this, everyone realized, okay, these people are acting according to their interests, and he has a coherent ideology, and they're doing things that they want. And it's very little like, oh, they're crazy. If anything, it's Trump who's the crazy one in these negotiations, right?
Yeah.
So it's a parallel here when you
point.
hear all these like white nationalists, people who are just new right, anarchists, the whole kit and caboodle. Oh, they're all nuts. They're all the same. It's like, no. I'm the one sitting down and tell you this is the coherent ideology, which you are free to repudiate, but don't say Mike Cernovich is the same thing as Cantwell, and Cantwell is the same thing as Murray Rothbard or Hitler even.
Right. And now I guess Roseanne is the same thing as all of them at this point too. It's like anybody who they kind of paint into this world, you're like, as like Roseanne has been like I think a socialist for most of her life.
Okay, this is the point I made this week. Roseanne's show was socialist propaganda. First of all, she has a kid, the son is wearing dresses, and it's presented that everyone has to accommodate this, right? He's like gender fluid. Mm-hmm. There was a whole episode about be nice to your Muslim neighbor. That was literally the whole plot. She comes in prejudiced. She meets them. They're nice. And then she yells at the cashier who's prejudiced against Muslims. If this was anyone but Roseanne, the Daily Caller would be flipping their shit.
It's really
straight
amazing.
Up lefty propaganda. Those two episodes specifically.
What's really amazing about it is that it seems like so much of it's like the culture, and this is something that is like red pilled me since I've been even into this stuff, I guess. But it seems like so much of the culture wars are won by the left.
Oh, yes.
And then they never are happy about it. They just push it further and tell you you're a bigot for that. Right. It's like the big example to me that always stuck out was gay marriage, which for most of my lifetime was the new civil rights issue of the left. And like, look, okay, I don't think the state should be involved in marriage, but I can get the argument behind gay marriage and being like, hey, man, this is like fucked up and that we think gay people should have the right to get married. And this was a civil rights issue for so many people. And they won. And they won where, like, not only were they getting state by state by state was legalizing it, but then the Supreme Court came in and said, hey, to the other 25 states or whatever, too bad, you don't get to vote on this, you don't have a decision, swallow it, gay marriage is legal. And by and large, the reaction on the right was to swallow it. There's a few little things here. That Wendy Davis chick went to jail, but it's not like you saw the next.
She went to jail?
The Wendy Davis went to jail for like a day.
She did? Oh, day.
Yeah, like it was not like a big, but she got arrested or whatever. She wouldn't give a gay marriage license, but then they got someone else in there. They gave the license. All those gay people who wanted to got married.
Are you actually complaining that a government employee is going to jail?
No, no. I'm just saying what the reaction was to it. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't really care one way or the other. But yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying it's not like the next Republican presidential candidate was running on, we're going to overturn the Supreme Court. There wasn't a backlash. It's like this thing that you said was your central issue. You won. And in general, if you do opinion polls, the right started getting more open to it. Right. Like they were just kind of like, yeah, all right, I guess. Like even the young evangelicals now, I think a good portion of them are for gay marriage. Yes. They're fine with it. And then the left's reaction to that, instead of like, hey, take a breath, or maybe even a victory lap, or maybe even, if you want to be smart about it, congratulate the right on accepting this. And like, okay, great, we all know. But no, it's literally the second after that, they're like, and transgender people should have bathrooms. And they're like, well, I don't know about that. It's a bigot. And it's like, so you're just looking to paint the other side as bigots and keep this train moving as far as you can.
Yeah, well,
because even Roseanne, with all the things that you described, the problem is it's a show about the heartland and a Trump supporter, and that's too much. It doesn't matter if you have a transgender kid. It doesn't matter what color people on the show are. If you're nice to your Muslim neighbors, it's the middle of the country and it's a Trump supporter, and that means hate.
Oh yeah,
and it has to. So they were looking for any excuse, and she handed him a big one.
Well, I don't know that they were looking for any excuse. I mean, it's going to be very hard as ABC, which, you know, corporate America, this is one of the things I disagree with very heavily about Rand. You know, she thinks that corporate America is going to be the ones who are going to be standing up and defending your rights. When has corporate America stood up for anyone? They are the most pussy, whipped, I'm using those words separately. They are, if you look at corporate art, is monumental in size but completely incoherent in what it's representing. It's never ever making any kind of statement, so they're terrified to make a stand of any kind other than when you're Starbucks, when part of your brand is being kowtowing to the evangelical left.
Yeah, that really is. That's a great term for him, and that is really it is interesting. It does seem like whatever.
Well, here's the thing. Here's why. This is why I disagree with you. Why you're surprised about the transgender rights, whatever, and then it was Muslim rights as well. For years, you had people who were missionaries trying to go to Africa, going to China, going to all these weird countries, because the point is, if these people don't accept Christ, if they haven't heard Christ's word, they're going to go to hell. So it's just this weird loophole. Like, even if they never had the option of accepting Jesus because there's no Christians in the whole country, tough shit, you're going to hell, right? So they're like, fuck, we better fix this. So they had their missionaries go over all across the world. And it's the same thing with this. It's like, you can't ever escape any kind of fundamentalist faith. It has to be pervasive and dominate the whole world.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. It does seem, you know, it's like you put it this way, which I always thought, I think is like a great way to put it, but that conservatism
is progressivism driving the speed limit.
Yeah.
There was just an article in National Review this month, The Conservative Case for Transgender Rights. I'm for transgender rights. But the thing is, have some fucking backbone. If this is something you were fighting tooth and nail for 20 years, and you're still sticking the line on Roe v. Wade, where the fuck's your fucking backbone?
Right. Right. Well, it's and you can almost look throughout the 20th century. That's kind of always what conservatism is. You could almost define it by progressives 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Like in 1950, you'll see like the anti-New Dealers.
Right.
You know, in 1970, you'll see the Great Society people.
Right.
And then in and every generation, they just accept the victories of statism by the left from the previous generation.
And then argue that it's been part of conservatism all along.
Right.
Reagan's big hero was FDR. There was an article that I've been searching for, and I can't find. If anyone finds it, I'll be eternally grateful. I remember in the 90s, National Review had a piece making the comparison of like arguing for gay rights. Like, soon we're going to be hearing about, because the one of the ways gay rights was put over is you had all these celebrities who were coming out as gay, right? And that was kind of normalizing homosexual relations. And they had an article that goes, how long is it going to be until we have all these articles about these, and also they're saying Lincoln was gay and all these historical figures, right? So National Review, I think it was National Review, I can't fucking find it for the life of me, had a piece goes, how long is it going to be until we have, this historical figure was a necrophile, and this one, a necrophilia, is okay. And they were literally equating homosexuality and necrophilia, and I swear it was National Review and whatever. Huh. And it's like, now it's like, what are you talking about? Conservatism means gay rights. And it's just like, again, I'm very, very much for gay rights.
Right.
It's like, where are your principles?
Yeah.
It's just, you're just fucking kowtowing and bending over backwards to whatever the leftists want.
Yeah, and there's something about the new right, which is, it seems to me that anybody who did stick to their principles was drummed out of the conservative movement. And this is what Bill Buckley was the master of.
Oh, yes.
And all the mainstream conservatives, all the neocons loved him for this.
Oh, yes.
Because he got out anybody, if you were a Ron Paul type libertarian,
right, or
if you were like a John Birch Society,
yes,
a Pat Buchanan later. Pat Buchanan was cool for a little bit until he turned against the post-Cold War wars.
Right.
But all those guys, you had to go. You had to get out. Like, you weren't allowed in here anymore. And now with the internet, it's kind of like, oh, you can't really do that the same way that you used to.
Well, it was really great because my editor's like, you have all this vitriol toward Buckley. And I'm like, all right. And I just fucking doubled down. I found all the quotes. I did all the numbers. Buckley has like, and I hate using heuristics like this because I think they're stupid, but this is something people at mainstreamers love. Buckley has like 4,000 likes on Facebook. Rothbard has like 30,000. Mm-hmm. So like, who is actually having an audience?
Which is great. It's great, and if you read the obituary that Bill Buckley wrote of Murray
I talk
Rothbard,
about that in the book.
Oof, God, he was such a cunt.
This is the thing that Buckley is a lot like. He has the worst qualities of the left, which is smug, smarminess, and the appearance of being dignified and classy, whereas you're just as much of a piece of shit as everybody else. And you can read it in an obituary, which is historically and culturally recognized as this is the time you say nice things about the person, they're gone. And no, he had to fucking twist the knife when the body wasn't even cold. And Vox Day, who was a white nationalist, tweeted out, and I mentioned this in the book, when the new right say new right or alt-right, I forget, comes to power, the first thing we're going to do is dig up Bill Buckley's corpse and set it on fire. So yeah.
Yeah, well, Bill Buckley really...
And who reads God and Man at Yale? Nobody.
Nobody.
I literally don't know anyone who's read it.
That's right. And For a New Liberty will be read forever. I mean, literally, like, people will still be reading that. Yeah, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah. No, that's right. Oh, that's the thing
They're
where you start to realize...
They're making a movie now this week. No one's ever made a God and Man at Yale.
Well, I remember Tom Wood said this once. I can't remember when he said it, but he said something. He was like, Ron Paul's books will still be read into the future. People will still be looking up Ron Paul's books. Who's looking up Mitt Romney's books?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you guys, even if you win the moment, you guys are not, you're losing the future. At least this is what I hope. But they are. There is a lot of truth to this. And it does seem like what you talked about with conservatives not actually standing for anything. It seems like that's a big dynamic with the new right and the new political moment that we're in now, is that there is this desire to stand for something. Right. Everyone has this natural kind of desire to stand for something.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people don't have that desire whatsoever.
Well, they like to pretend to.
Oh, sure. Of course,
at least they want to feel like they're standing for something. And on the left, they feel like, well, we're standing for equality or we're standing against bigotry. And conservatives are kind of left with this, like, we're standing to conserve the last 15 years.
America, traditional values.
Just vague ideas.
Traditional values means Woodrow Wilson.
Right.
I mean, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. And the truth is that there's almost this, and some libertarians and some people who I like very much will still fall into this thing where it's always like, well, but no, we got to go back before Woodrow Wilson, or we got to go back before this, and you basically get back to a time of slavery and a horrible thing. It's like, yeah, no, it's not really back there. Right. There are some good traditions from the past, but really what we are is radicals who want to go into the future, into a much better direction. But it does seem, what do you think is going on with the right wing now? Like the right that elected Donald Trump, that basically did what all of their overlords told them not to do, which was vote for this guy. You know, like all of the Mitt Romney came out and was like, no, guys, we need to find some other nominee. And they're like, yeah, go suck a dick, Mitt. We're voting for this guy. What do you think? Where do you think they go now?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Mitt Romney for a second.
Sure.
Because when he announced he was going to be running for senator in Utah, I said he's not going to get the nomination. And people fucking came at me on Twitter because they're like, this is fucking Utah. And in 1992, Bill Clinton came in third in Utah behind Ross Perot. That's how it's the reddest state. But it's like Larry, I forget Bob Bennett, who was the Utah senator. He didn't get out of the convention. The primary was down to two other guys. He came in third. He was a sitting senator. So I knew there's no way there. Now Romney did not get the majority. Yeah. He has to run a primary.
It's crazy.
He's not going to fucking get the nomination. If he has to go toe to toe among Republican Party activists, why the fuck would Romney get the nomination? When's the last time he's lived in Utah?
I was surprised
he got. Let him lose again.
I was really surprised he got the nomination in 2012. It was really, and it depressed me a lot because I was like, man, we had just had the Tea Party.
But for 40 years, the Republicans always gave it to the previous loser.
Yeah, no, I know, but I thought, given the Tea Party movement and the intense backlash to Obamacare, I was like, there's no way they're going to elect the guy who authored Obamacare. And then I was really depressed, where I was just like, oh, it's just whoever the party picks. Like, whoever the party picks is going to win. But then this time, Jeb Bush, last I checked, is not Jeb is not in there. Yeah,
Jeb is a big fat mistake.
But it did take Donald Trump to just blow that whole thing up.
Yeah, but then the Democrats switched because now they ran the last loser.
That's right.
So next time it's probably going to be it could be Biden or something.
Well, that's interesting or too. And really, I mean, if you looked at Hillary Clinton's not her whole campaign, but certainly if you looked at the Democratic National Convention, it was the Republican National Convention. I mean, it was like she just ran as a Republican.
Right.
She ran like, oh, this
guy's
yeah. And it's that's there's something there that's really interesting. Do you think? I remember you saying this once. I believe it was on Tom's podcast that you said that in a lot of ways, for people like us, Hillary Clinton winning would have been the best thing in terms of a long-term strategy.
Oh,
not
yeah.
That,
No,
not that
short-term strategy.
Oh, even short-term, you thought?
Yeah, because...
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I think you might have been right about that.
I mean, she was such a... Okay, this is the episode's called The Libertarian Case for Hillary Clinton Presidency. And Nixon gave the left so much of what they wanted. Oftentimes, an incompetent president is going to be counterproductive. So she cost the Democrats the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years in 94 because she was such a fuck-up. She's such a fuck-up, she almost lost the nomination to someone who wasn't even in her party, which should not even be technically possible.
An 80-year-old socialist.
Jew.
Jew
atheist. I don't care what he says about religion. He's an atheist.
Who's running around, on record praising Castro and the wonderful... Who's actually on record having said, he goes, a lot of people say... look at all these countries. They have people standing online for breads. That's actually a good thing.
No,
this is a Bernie Sanders quote.
No, he did not say that.
Rob, YouTube, Bernie Sanders, breadlines good.
Wait, did you... well, I've got another one for you.
I'm not even making this up. Bernie Sanders is on record saying breadlines are good. Yeah, pull it up right at the top, that first one. Right here, bro. This is. I mean, look, it's a younger Bernie Sanders who weirdly is still an old man. I'm not quite sure how you could. Bernie Sanders was never young. He was always Bernie Sanders. Play this clip.
It's funny. Sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
Oh, my God.
There's Bernie Sanders praising those wonderful bread lines. Oh, what's the problem? They've got bread.
I've never seen that clip before. The clip
it is bonkers.
The clip that blew my mind this week was when Hillary Clinton was talking to Charlemagne and all those other people during the campaign.
I didn't see that. During the campaign with the hot sauce?
Yeah. This is so they go, what do you have? She's like, hot sauce. And they're laughing and they go, are you just pandering to black people? Do you know what she says? She goes, is it working? She says that to them. I never heard the punchline.
Oh my God.
Dude, can you pull that up, Hillary Charlemagne? It was like 20 seconds.
Hillary hot sauce.
Yeah.
Should probably.
Is it working? I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, you're so beautiful.
So this was the Democratic primary right here.
Sauce in my bag. Swag.
So what's something that you always carry with you?
Yeah. It's one of these videos that's animated a little bit.
Hot sauce.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we just have.
They were accusing her of pandering to black people. I want you to hear this soundbite, and then I want to get your reaction.
You getting information right?
Hot sauce.
Always carry with you.
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you getting information right now? Hot sauce in my bag, swag?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now listen, I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to black people.
Okay. Is it working?
So what do you make of
Can you believe that? Is it working? I can't believe this.
I'm going to need to see the Bernie Sanders breadline clips again. I can't figure out which is worse.
If she was president, the Republicans would be starting investigations on day one. She'd be completely crippled politically, and they'd be able to get over on her like they did on Blue Clinton. They gave him a balanced budget. They cut a welfare entitlement. Like, she would be very good at getting right-wing ideas across.
Now, my biggest, the concern with Hillary Clinton was that she was real trigger happy militarily, and that she was going to start another war.
Well, I didn't realize that that there would be a nationalist as an option.
Right. So that obviously was the big concern. But one of the other things that I just like about Hillary Clinton being president is that it just, I do feel like it makes my job easier. And the Trump is a difficult, it's like you have, so like my natural position is to be against the president, whoever they are, and be like, yes, they're presiding over this evil institution that is the state. I'm against them. Now you have this huge group of people who are against Trump. They're against him for all the wrong reasons. And now every argument I make has to be like, look, I'm not a Trump supporter, but you guys are out of your fucking mind. Okay, here's where he's actually fucking up. Here's what you think he's a fucking Russian puppet. You're out of your mind. And it's very complicated and a lot more difficult.
My friend who's visiting here from Singapore was at the gym, and he just started talking to some dude. And the dude immediately is like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, you're from Singapore? Did you move out of here because of Trump? This is how the mind works, and I'm using the mind very loosely. And my friend goes to him, what would it take for you to change your mind about Trump and say he did a good job? He goes, let's suppose 3 years from now, we have peace in the North Korean peninsula, unemployment is an all-time low, and the economy is doing great. Would that make you say he's doing a good job? He goes, no, because that would be worse, because that would mean that he was right. And my friend's like, wow. Okay.
That's it.
That's it. That's all you need to hear.
It's like, can you just listen to yourself back?
They can't.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Well, that was a thing, too, where one of the things that became really clear over the election was just how, it's almost like there was this world where everything on the Republican side was deemed racist and sexist for so long.
Right.
And the Republicans are, to me and you, they're like the most milquetoast people you could imagine.
Right.
It's so, but they'd have things where, they'd be like, Mitt Romney, why didn't you hire more women? And he was like, I wanted to. I really, really wanted to. I asked for binders full of women. Please don't hate me. And they're like, you said binders full of women, and they were already like, that's evil. So when Trump came in, is just like, hey, a lot of these Mexicans are rapists. It's like their heads explode. Like they're like, oh, that's actually what we've been pretending everybody else is for. Right. It's like they can't even deal with it. And then it was this weird thing where they'd be like, he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi. And you're like, well, he did say however you feel about the statement. He did end it with, and some of them are good people. I don't recall Hitler ever given a speech about the Jews and then going like, and some of them are just good family
some
men.
I imagine are good
people. Yeah, he did. To be fair, he did say some I imagine are good. He's like, look, there's obviously no documented proof on this, but there's got to be a good Mexican out there somewhere, I'm sure. But it was what Trump did. Freudian. What Trump did was he did not play this game. And it seemed to me it was the rules of the left, and this is their religious rules, are that if you are a straight white man, and especially a straight white successful capitalist man, then you better be goddamn apologetic. You better be like, hey, I'll keep my head down here. I'm sorry about all of my success. I understand how difficult it is for other people. And Trump is just the most unapologetic, like, I am what I am. I don't feel even kind of guilty about it. Ann Coulter wrote in her book that this comment summed up Donald Trump. I thought it was such a great summation of all of Trump. And it was one of the first interview he did with Megyn Kelly after he announced he was running. And she goes, she was like, she said, okay, well, the last Republican nominee was Mitt Romney, and the Democrats were able to paint him as this out-of-touch rich guy.
Right.
If you get the nomination, how do you avoid being painted that way? And Donald Trump's response, he goes, first of all, Mitt Romney's not that rich.
Yeah, I know. It's the best.
That is Donald Trump right there. And then she goes, did you just compare me to that 100 millionaire, you fucking asshole? Are you out of your mind?
Someone made this joke, and I wish I could give them credit. I forgot who, but they made the point. They're like, because they make fun of his little hands, how ugly he looks. He goes, this is someone who fucks models, porn stars, and Playboy playmates to the point where the porn star won't stop talking about it.
Yeah, right. That's it. It's like, oh, and it's so funny, like the people who like to go like, this just happens all over the place though, where it's like, online and stuff, but people love to go like, such a fucking idiot, such a loser. Goes like, well, if he's an idiot and a loser, and you're so much smarter than him, it's like you rent a studio apartment. And his name is all over, fucking high rises all over New York City.
And
so
we'll be on the currency.
Yes,
he will
that's
have a coin with his picture on it.
So maybe keep your, keep the condescension down.
I was on the train and I heard two midwits talking. One of them was saying, "I don't understand how anyone could like Trump," and the other one, next sentence he goes, "It must be low information voters," right? It's like, if you don't understand something, you're the one with low information, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like by the very nature of it, you have described yourself as a low information voter. And I also, I thought right away when everybody on the left is summing up the Trump moment as like, oh, well, it's like, right, it's got to be something like that. They're all ignorant or just they're all bigots, and he does. And it was like somewhat obvious to me that it was like, well, Hillary Clinton is going into the Rust Belt, into so Donald Trump's going in there to this area of people who did not participate in the Obama recovery. Obama's up there talking about how great his recovery is. They're like, we haven't participated in that at all. One of my sons died in war. Yeah. The other one's addicted to opioids. You know what I mean? The fucking steel mill is still closed down. I'm working 2 jobs where I used to have to work 1. We're struggling for X, Y, Z. Our healthcare premiums are going up. And Donald Trump came to them and went, hey, I'm going to fix all that. We're going to stop sending your kids off to these wars. We're going to bring your job back. We're going to make this country great again. Your healthcare costs are going to go down. Now, I'm not saying he had answers to actually doing any of this, but that's what he said to him. And Hillary Clinton came back to those people and went, how offensive is Donald Trump? And they were like, what? Like, I don't know. He seems to be winning in his life, and he told us he's going to make us win too. So, like, I like that guy.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to have to be a lot of hatred there. It could just be like, oh, he seems like he's got it figured out.
So do they all think you're a lunatic at Headline News?
Well, you know, I'm on S.E. Cup show, and Andy Levy is libertarian. He, you know, in that world. So I think I think they. You know, S.E. Cup leans conservative, Andy leans libertarian. So it's not like they're crazy out there, but they think I'm a bit radical. I know compared to you, I'm a moderate centrist, but compared to those guys, they see me as a bit of a radical.
Do we want to tell the people the backstory of that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So I was on Kumia's show the first time I was on. This must have been over a year ago. This was easily over a year ago. And Anthony just makes the point, like, wow, you know, you sound a lot like Dave Smith, but he's a lot more moderate. What did he say? Do you remember what he said?
Something like that. I just remember I was in an airport listening to it on my headphones, and at some point, and I'm sitting at a bar having a drink at the airport. And yeah, he said something like he goes, oh,
Dave's a lot more mainstream.
Yeah, you know, or something like that. But he goes, you know, you make a lot of the same points that Dave Smith makes. I think you guys make some great points, but you're like really radical with it. And I literally threw my hands up in the air at the bar. I've known Amp for years. He just met Malice. I've told him I'm an anarchist 1,000,000 times.
So
has he not been listening?
So I started busting your balls, but then I stopped because I didn't want people to think I was serious or that they would actually start to believe that you're just some kind of Gary Johnson Republican. Then we're backstage and Owen Benjamin's doing his set, and just coincidentally, he's like, yeah, but I mean, I'm turning to the right. I've got these friends. I've got Malice, who's an anarchist, Dave, who's a libertarian, and we just lost
And
it.
I literally just look right back at Malice and I go, are you paying these people, man? Like, what's happening? These are close personal friends of mine who are well aware of my political views.
Amazing. It was so. I think I'm going to put moderate libertarian in the book.
You son of a bitch.
I think I have to now.
You son of a bitch.
I have to.
A lot of people read the book won't get it. It's not like doing it on the Tom Woods show where they all know me. I don't like this. Nothing makes me more uncomfortable than being called a moderate.
Is that true?
Yeah, there's something I hate
because it's cowardice.
Yeah, that's right.
Cowardice.
I hate that. I hate something drives me crazy about.
Would you rather be called a monarchist or a minarchist or moderate?
Minarchist, but I don't like it either.
Okay.
But I rather that than moderate.
Because moderate describes your personality, minarchist is just wrong. It's just
right,
inaccuracy.
Right, yes. There's something about there's nothing that drives me crazy more than if you're arguing a point with somebody and you make a really good argument and the response will be like, well, I see what you're saying, but you're just taking it a little bit too far.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
It's just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, look, it's probably the answer somewhere in the middle.
Right.
It's like, oh, wait, nice safe space you've created there where you don't have to make a point, have an argument, but you can just say, oh, but I'm just above that because I see both sides of the issue. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. In some cases, an extreme is correct. Like, I don't know. You're like, you know, like how much rape should be morally tolerated? Like, none. That's the answer. Right. It's not like, well, I guess we need a little bit of that. You know, like how much slavery should we have? Well, you know, you want to abolish slavery. That was the official compromise, by the way. Not a great compromise. Didn't work out well. We ended up fighting a war.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that drives but I mean, I think it's hilarious the way you do it. But yeah. So that's the whole backstory on my moderate politics.
It's so funny.
It really was, dude. When Owen did it the second time, I
couldn't
was
believe
like,
it.
Motherfucker!
I couldn't believe it.
I've had long conversations with Owen about anarcho-capitalism. By the way, I think Owen is, if he's not there yet, is a pube hair away from being an anarcho-capitalist.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
He's right there, and I know when it was. I think and
he wants to be. I think he just wants to understand how this would work.
Yeah, which I get too. That's fair. Hung me up for a while too. Like I had morally accepted the anarcho-capitalism, but I still needed to kind of wrap my head around it a little bit more. But I think it was a combination of you, me, and Stefan Molyneux.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of after a while pushed him.
But Stefan's a nationalist now. Is he still an ANCAP?
He's still an ANCAP. He's still an ANCAP. I think that Stefan Molyneux, in the same way that if you supported like states' rights and secession, they'd be like, oh, so you believe in states or something like that. I think he sees this as a pathway, as the best chance for an anarcho-capitalist society is to embrace the nationalists over the internationalists,
one
the globalists.
One like I was saying earlier, one of the most disturbing libertarian moments of my career. I can't believe I could say that my career with a straight face, but apparently I was on Molyneux, and we were just going off about how the press was praising Kim Jong-un's sister.
Oh, that was amazing.
And the libertarians are like, I can't believe this is neocon propaganda. I'm like, this woman, her job is to brainwash a nation, and she's above criticism, but I can criticize Samantha Bee? Like, give me a billion Samantha Bees any day of the week.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I mean, it's like, there is... So a lot of what happens in the Middle East is that people will criticize different cultures in the Middle East when there was large American intervention that ended up either throwing fuel on a fire or completely destabilizing progress, and people will just criticize that. Is, like, look at ISIS, how terrible they are. We need to go bomb the crap out of them. And it's like, well, the correct answer was actually probably we shouldn't have funded them to begin with.
Yes.
And that, it's like misunderstanding that is really, really important. And I understand where certainly a lot of people, when they're advocating how horrible another government are, they are advocating like some type of military option. But, I mean, guys, we can walk and chew gum. Like, I mean, it's like, yes, you can say, I don't want to take any military action in North Korea. I also don't think our troops should be in South Korea.
Right.
I don't think this is our fight. And I don't think we need to be involved in every fight. We certainly don't ever make these things better. But you can also, I mean, if you believe in liberty at all, and you actually have some humanity, not just for the people in the artificially drawn borders by our government, which we don't really believe in to begin with, right? So if you believe in that, you go like, my God, you would hope that by some fucking miracle the state in North Korea would fall. And the other thing, the thing that's kind of disturbing about, and it really does show where people's kind of moral worldview is that there has been no talk besides you. I haven't heard anybody on cable news, and myself. I said it once, but I was kind of just repeating you. But has said, like, in these negotiations, they're like, well, would this be, then I said, what I care about far more than a denuclearized North Korea is to put some pressure on him to close down a few of these torture camps that he has. I mean, that would be really, really nice.
I was on Glenn Beck, and I'm going to be covering the summit for Glenn Beck. And when he put up the clip of me, the whole segment that I was on, the headline was my quote, which is, when they released those hostages, I said, 3 down, 25 million to go. Yeah. And that's exactly how I was looking at this. So to have that go forward to reach a large audience is really wonderful.
Because that's really the point. Yeah, it's like, I don't buy into this, like, as you were saying before, like the narrative, which is the same narrative the neocons would use with Iran, which is like, well, if they get a nuke, these aren't rational actors. They'll just drop it tomorrow. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, there's no evidence to suggest that. And with North Korea, there's actually a few years now of evidence to suggest that they're not just going to nuke people because they understand that there'd be 40 nukes dropped on them right afterward, and that doesn't work out so well. So my big concern isn't really them having the nuke. The big concern is the treatment of these people, as you put it, 25 million hostages, essentially.
And it was really interesting last summer when they were going to nuke Guam. Remember when they were threatening to nuke Guam? And people were freaking out. And I'm like, let me ask you this. You got one shot, right? Let's, because there's going to be massive retaliation. Is Guam the target?
Right.
It's going to be LA. It's going to be Washington. It's going to be Guam.
Or at least Seoul. I mean, not Guam.
Seoul.
Like, it doesn't even make any sense.
Guam is technically part of the U.S., but if you want to mail something there, like you can mail a letter to Hawaii directly. Guam is so far away, you still have to do the whole customs form, even though it's American soil.
Right. Okay. So it's not, and it's like it just doesn't really. The idea, it actually, it makes them a lot scarier.
They were going to nuke Alaska. I'm like, Alaska, you're going to nuke Alaska. What does Juneau have, 5,000 people?
Yeah, really.
No offense to the people in Juneau, you're great, but come on.
Yeah, it just doesn't really seem like so plausible. And again, like, why is he going to do it now, but didn't do it last year, didn't do it the year before? It's like, no, but you would like to see some pressure on that. It was at least like Donald Trump did have that guy at the State of the Union who escaped from North Korea. It's like, the real story is that.
Yes.
The real story is that people live like that, and it's like, babies are fucking starving to death.
Yes.
That's the problem, Like,
100%.
it's not just like, oh, he's got a weapon that we feel like the only people that ever use nukes aggressively were us. Right. We're the only ones, or the military, not us, not me and you. But it's like, so anyway, that's that. I wish, it's nice that you're out there saying it, but you seem to be the only one.
This is my struggle. That's fine.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, I'm amazed at how quickly the conversation has turned, and I'm ecstatic and delighted, especially on the right. And I think it's both a question of the George Bush presidency being so discredited, and it's like drug legalization. I don't think there's two sides to that issue because it's very hard once you break it down to say it's easy to say drugs should be illegal. It's very hard to say, do you think everyone who's an addict should be locked in a jail? And those are, even though those two concepts are the same thing conceptually, it's not once you think about it. Yeah, it's like, oh, wait a minute, that is what I'm saying.
Well, yes, I've made this point a lot, and I said this when I was on Rogan's podcast, where I said basically that my central point to anyone who's non-libertarian when we're arguing about this stuff or discussing this stuff, I go, it's like the thing I just harp on is just like, who should be thrown in a cage like an animal? That's the only question that really matters, because it's real easy to say this things like, well, I believe in Obamacare, I believe in a social safety net, or drugs should be illegal, I don't want drugs in my community. It's like, yeah. But you're not getting at the heart of what the issue is. And there's only one tool in the state's toolkit, and that's throw you in a fucking cage. Like, oh, we could fine you, and then if you don't pay the fine, we'll throw you in a fucking cage. But basically, it's throw you in a cage. And who are you comfortable doing this to? You know, I'm not even sure. It's like, I'll give you like murderer, rapist, violent thief, something like that. But I'm not even sure that's the humanitarian answer for that. Like, probably they should be sent to fucking some other place, exiled. But, like, really, you're going to tell me someone didn't pay their taxes on time? And so we can throw them into a cage?
Like debtor's prison back in the day, which is where our psychotic today. But that's the other thing. So, like, once you start breaking this down to people, it's very easy to change their minds. And I think this has happened with North Korea. Like, once you start explaining this, it's like, oh yeah, what am I advocating? Like, these are people who need help. Yeah.
So you once Trump's hat was in the ring, and Trump was running, I remember you were one of my friends, the earliest on, who were like, this guy's going to win.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think he was going to get the Republican nomination. I still thought they were going to fuck around and change the rules on him. And I was like, I just don't see it happening. And I didn't think he would beat Hillary. I was obviously not correct about that.
Yeah.
But you saw this kind of early on, that Trump was going to be able to win. And you were one of the ones when you did the Tom Woods podcast where you were talking about how the debates were going to go. That's one of the things that started kind of changing my mind.
Yeah, you still use that in your set.
Oh, yeah. Well, I used my version of it in your set. No, but that is what inspired that joke. And there was something amazing about those moments where he was just able, I mean, it's like you got to stand next to this maniac, and it's like this, it's just impossible.
The best debate moment, because this is the thing with her. She thinks she's a lot smarter than she is. You're not going to have better one-liners than him. You're going to beat him on policy. You're going to beat him on experience. You're going to beat him on credibility. She had all those. Like, she could run the table. She couldn't help herself, but she had to be a fucking smartass. And she's just like, well, I'm just glad someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is in charge of the laws of our country. And then she turns and looks at him to stare him down as if he's not going to have a nuke ready. And then he just goes, yeah, because you'd be in jail. Audience loses it. Anderson Cooper's like, please stop laughing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And Anderson Cooper didn't do her any favors either.
But it's
to be the one in the room that just makes it obvious that the mainstream media's role is to be like, now kids, don't you laugh at Mrs. Hillary Clinton, please.
And listen, I'm good with the one-liners. If I'm going up against Don Rickles, I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with him on this.
That's right.
You're going to lose every time.
Trump did have this thing in the debates. It was this amazing instinct for him. Because if you remember, he would come into the debates, and it was almost like he was working. It was like every muscle in Donald Trump's body was clinched to not be a dick. Like, he would come in, and he'd be taking these deep breaths. And he'd be like, I just want to say, I have respect for Secretary Hillary Clinton. Secretary, is it okay? Is that okay? Secretary Clinton, and he'd be like, and he'd kind of be nice, but he's sitting there like this counter puncher who's waiting for you to throw that first punch and expose yourself. And as soon as you do, it's like bop, bop, bop. And he is so good that throughout all the debates, it's like a great third grade bully, but he's great at picking the thing on you that everyone's going to not look at you again the same way. And I'll tell you, one of the moments that I thought was really, really amazing in the debates too, and that was the biggest punch, what you just said that he landed. But there was really one where he goes, with the thing that they turned into the shirt, where he goes, she's a nasty woman.
Yeah.
She is a nasty woman. And it was like getting right to the thing. It's, look, I'm someone who knows Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
This is what, and everybody here, she's trying to paint herself. Look, she is not what she claims to be. And underneath that is a nasty fucking person. And there's something really true about that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you see Hillary Clinton now giving her commencement speech, and she's like, oh, let me get my Russian hat. Here. How do you feel? And you're like, wow, you are an asshole. Like, you're a nasty person.
She needs it to cover her tinfoil hat.
Right. Yeah. Right. But there's something there. And he was able to just kind of, you know, really pick at, and the other thing is what you said, where she's not as smart as she claims to be. You know, it's like a lot of these guys, even with Obama, who's a brilliant orator and really a truly talented public speaker.
Oh, yeah.
But it was always fluff. You know, what Obama was always great at doing, and he was amazing at it. I mean, it was like, you know, you could learn a lot from Obama about public speaking, but what he was always able to do was, you know, these things where it's like, you know, they didn't say anything. It was just kind of like, I love this country, and so do you, and so does John McCain. The men and women who have fought for this country have been Republicans and independents and Democrats, but they fought together and bled together and died together. They did not die defending a red America or a blue America. They defied the United States of America. And it's like, great, my hair's standing up, I'm up off my seat, this is a great moment, but you didn't say anything. You don't actually have really anything to say.
Right.
And that's why, you know, during the fucking election, he was like, oh, the individual mandate's bad. Then he gets in there, oh, the individual mandate's good. It's the war's bad. Now the war is good. It's like you can flip your policies because it's just about this. And Hillary Clinton was like, well, I'm going to come in here and show you I actually understand policy. And you kind of started to realize this whole thing's smoke and mirrors. Right. And Hillary Clinton came in there and she went, they were like, well, you know, Black Lives Matter is protesting against cops. What do you say? And she goes, better training and better public schools. Yeah, it was like she had nothing. She had just these empty fucking sentences. And then you were like, that's basically the same thing as bring our jobs back. Yeah. It's nothing. Right. You have no fucking idea. And so he's better at this.
And she's just chilling in St. Louis.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, okay, so you got that right, your prediction about Trump. What do you think is going to happen going forward? Because this is kind of the big question. You know, it's like I just did a video today that's up on YouTube about the United States of America breaking up, the idea of secession, and that I do think it's inevitable.
Well,
I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow.
I wrote a piece on this 2 years ago, the case for breaking up the states for Observer. People can Google it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so it's like I do think, and I think you'd probably agree with me, but it does seem like, now obviously we're not the most divided we've ever been. We did fight a civil war at one point. There's been some pretty, 1968 was not exactly, an easy year. But it does seem like there are these different constituencies that I just can't imagine ever really coming together again. You know, I mean, if you have Donald Trump's hardcore supporters who say build a wall, deport everybody, and the lefty hardcores who say, you know, any talk of that makes you a Nazi.
Right.
There's no real middle ground. There's no solution here. And it does seem like culturally we're kind of coming apart. Fiscally, we're coming apart. Militarily, we're coming apart. What do you think happens? I mean, after Donald Trump, are we going back to a normal politician?
Have you ever played Gauntlet?
No, I don't think so.
So Gauntlet is this video game, and you're either the archer, the wizard, the barbarian, or I forget what the fourth one is, thief. And basically, you have to shoot your weapon at the monsters, and they're these little things where they spawn out of, right? These nests. So it's either gonna take 1, 2, or 3 hits to take out the nest, and then they don't keep spawning. You got to go to the exit in every level, and there's a timer. What happens in the next few years depends on whether we can desanctify the universities, because those are the spawning grounds for all this.
Right.
If the universities are desanctified, like the media has been and the government has been, if people regard the universities with extreme amount of cynicism or even just a grain of salt, a lot of this stuff collapses and becomes solvable.
Yeah, you know, I've seen a few of those like videos that have leaked where it's like student destroys professor. And they've got like an iPhone open, and it'll just be like some of these like right-wing students now.
What a great idea!
Like, yeah, I'll show you one of them. But it's like some of these right-wing students now they have the internet. They kind of have all this information, and they go in there, and it's like there was one where the teacher's like they're basically making an argument that I think it was the shooter in Texas, the guy who shot up the church.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, why don't we call this terrorism? We only call it terrorism in America if it's a brown person who does it, blah, blah, blah. And he's arguing back and forth with her. And he pulls up he's like, that's not the definition of terrorism. Right. Terrorism has to have a political aim
right,
to it. So it's like, it's not right.
Not terrorism,
and she's like, no, terrorism is anytime you kill people. And he pulls up the definition on his phone, like he's just got it all there, and he just shuts her down. And there is something. What's really interesting about it is like you see that, all these kids in college. I mean, it's like. Okay, it's not true for everybody. There's still some very brilliant people in different departments, and there'll be biology departments in a school where there's some real brilliant kids. But the vast majority of these kids, and this is what happened since we've encouraged so many people to go to college, it's like they come out. It's astounding how little they know, and what they do know is absolute horseshit.
Yeah, so what I've been advocating, and hopefully it's going to start happening, is in the same way that if you ever read an article now about Milo, it's going to say Milo, who defended pedophile rights, that's every article. Mike Cernovich, who was a rape apologist,
Right.
So every article about these universities has to say Professor Jones, who earns $250,000 a year to teach a course on Beyonce,
Right.
That has to be there for every article and every academic, so that the median person reading this is going to hate them and have contempt for them and not regard them as part of the same culture.
Right. Yeah, that would be a good.
That's how you do it.
That would be a good solution.
That's the first step.
Interesting. Yeah, it does seem to me like the university stuff. I remember back reading, and this is a while ago, like a decade ago, that I read the book, but The Closing of the American Mind by Alan Bloom.
Okay.
And he really talks about how so much of what happened in America, and he was writing this in the 80s. But he was really talking about the colleges being taken over in the 60s.
See, I talk about this in my book, and I disagree with that thesis. Because this has been the case since the early 1900s, that their goal, they were imported from Germany, was to create an elite who were going to run America.
Huh.
This has always been their goal.
Yeah, well, I think what he says in the book is that basically this stuff existed for a long time, but in the 60s it took over.
Okay, yeah,
and
yeah.
that
The
it
new
took
left,
over
yes.
like the college campuses, and it just started churning out the new people who are now going to kind of influence the world. And I mean, it's like people like even Hillary Clinton, who was an Saul Alinsky acolyte when she was in college. I believe Hillary was like a Barry Goldwater
girl,
and then went in and met Saul Alinsky and became who she is today.
Right.
And it does seem like there is. At risk of sounding conspiratorial, there does seem to be some degree of something's going on underneath all this, where there is like a real
I use that word conspiracy in the book, and I describe it, and that's exactly the whole point. It's just the Founding Fathers and the Constitution was a conspiracy.
Right.
Just because you like them doesn't mean they're not a conspiracy. They swore themselves to secrecy to take over the government. A small group of men. This was a conspiracy. Just because they're brilliant and you like the results does not mean it's a conspiracy. That's
right. And these guys are currently taking over right now. I don't like the results.
Well, it's also funny how you see a lot. I got into it. A couple of people. They didn't reply, but like people like Jake Tapper and all these people on the left, they were very conveniently using the term conspiracy theory to kind of dismiss large schools of thought. And I always reply, Kevin Spacey was a conspiracy theory. Harvey Weinstein was a conspiracy theory. Bill Cosby was a conspiracy theory. Everyone knew is a conspiracy. We all knew, and we protected him. That is what a conspiracy is. Right. A small subculture that is running interference for malfeasance on the part of their own.
Yeah, I had a conversation. It was part on air, part off air, but with Brian Stelter at CNN, who does the reliable sources.
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking about. He was like, why is it that these conspiracies, persist? And this was right after the Parkland shooting.
Okay.
And there was the video reached #1 trending on YouTube. That was like, these are all crisis actors.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is just dangerous, and going off about this. And he was like, why? And I was like, well, there's all these conspiracies that are real. Right. That are really crazy that the mainstream media doesn't report on at all. I mean, it's
or reports on them in the most you are complete.
Yes. But I made the point about Obama in the 2012 NDAA Act signing a provision that you can detain American citizens without charges,
right.
And the media has no interest in this. Like this isn't a big story to you guys. This is not, even if you're for it, you don't think this is worth covering.
Here's another example.
Nobody seems to care.
Mike Pompeo, who was the head of the CIA, the top spy in America, secretly met with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
And it was revealed 3 weeks later. There's all sorts of things that are
right.
So how
now,
can
again, that is a conspiracy where it's like we like the outcome
right.
of it, but that doesn't mean it's any less of a conspiracy.
Right.
And for that sake, look, the war in Iraq. was absolutely a neocon conspiracy. This is something that they had planned on doing way before 9/11. 9/11 came. They decided they were going to do it. It was a small group of people who hijacked positions of power in the government. And freaking Wesley Clark, a four-star general, is out there. He's on record talking about how he came in 2002, and they had plans of overthrowing 7 countries, 7 Muslim Arab nations. That he says it. He goes through the list and it's like Syria, Iraq, I forget.
Afghanistan.
There was Afghanistan, Libya, and then there's a couple more that we didn't end up overthrowing. There's like Lebanon and like a couple other ones, but it's
North Korea's not on the list?
No, North Korea's not on the list. It was I forget what it was. 5 countries in 7 years or something like that was the plan. They don't end up pulling off the plan. Right. But the idea that it's like, oh, all of a sudden, because Assad, is killing all these people, which is, Assad kills a lot of people, but it's a civil war. It's not as simple as Assad killing all these people. But because of all the deaths in Syria, we have to go overthrow Assad right now. It's like, yeah, but that was your plan in 2002.
Right.
And none of these people were getting killed there. It's like, this is a conspiracy. Call it what it is. All right, listen, we got to wrap because I know we got another show coming in here.
Who's next?
Ralph and Big J have their SDR show, I believe. Or no, am I getting that wrong? I don't know. Robbie Bernstein, I look to you for answers, and you just shrug your shoulders. Anyway, dude, I'm fucking thrilled that your show, You're Welcome, is here on the network. Guys, you got to go check it out. It's a fucking fantastic show. Michael is always great. I love listening to it. I'm very happy you're here. You're also still going to be doing a show on the Compound
in July,
network.
I'm going to have my nightly recap show.
Okay, so that's going to be great, too. Make sure you guys check that out as well. The new book is coming out. We'll have you back on when the new book is out. And and I highly, highly recommend Dear Reader. If you haven't read it, it's absolutely fantastic. It's like you learn a lot, and it's a really fun read the whole time. Yeah. So, all right, thanks again for coming in. We'll be back with a brand new episode on Monday. Peace.